Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are back in the Battle of Berlin campaign, and after having a look at the Soviet new weapons that are available around the place, it's time to have a look at the German ones. There are a decent amount of new weapons, and a lot of them are very interesting, and a few of them are very similar to other ones that we've seen, but some of them are completely new. So the first one is a new bolt-action rifle. It's the Kar-98K Kriegs model. Now, this one that you can actually find, it's available for the majority of troops, and it's mainly a rifle for infantrymen. And the way it's described, it's a simplified version of the Kar-98K, produced of lower quality materials in order to meet demands of the wartime, which obviously makes sense. Obviously, using less materials to make something is always going to be more beneficial. But the thing is, this doesn't seem to actually affect any of the hit power of the machine. If you compare it to the Kar-98K, the pre-war with the scope mounts, it has exactly the same damage as the Kar-98K Kriegs model, and the only real difference between the two is the scope mount has a slightly better reload. And that could be down to the fact that it actually has a star on it, where the Kriegs model doesn't. So this just seems to be a direct copy of the Kar-98K that we see in other campaigns, apart from it is a slightly different model, but functionally it is exactly the same. The next one is a GeForce 41 with the SG-8498 3 bayonet. This one is pretty interesting. It's got a very interesting muzzle on it, as you can see here. Right now it is available for the radio man, but it is also going to be something that will be available for standard infantry members, and I'm sure many other troops as well. So this is going to be probably the semi-automatic rifle that the majority of people are going to use when it comes to the campaign. A lot of people in the Invasion of Normandy campaign have used carbines, Garands, GeForce, mainly because you can just get a lot more damage out compared to the other machines that are around the place. And the main difference between this and the other GeForce is this actually has a different loading mechanism. So if you actually have a look at the one that's available in Normandy, so if we can find it really quick, this one actually reloads from the bottom. So what I'll show you is how it actually works. It's pretty interesting. How the GeForce in general is pretty cool. It's also kind of weird that we're at the Battle of Berlin and we're kind of going backwards because the one that's available in Berlin is one of the earlier models of the GeForce. But you can see, so you just fire and then you actually take out the I believe it's a magazine at the bottom. It's pretty cool, right? So when it comes to the one that's available in the Battle of Berlin campaign, it's actually slightly different in how it works. So the way that it works is it's designed more like the Lee Enfield in a way. So you have two sets of clips that you put in the top of it instead of in the bottom. So we just shoot these off. And as you can see, it takes out and then pushes them in, and there you go. It's very similar to the Lee Enfield, and also doesn't have too much of a worry about stuff such as the there's the kickback compared to the other one. It also has the bayonet on the front, which is pretty cool. The bayonet is quite deadly. It does work very well compared to the general knife, which obviously you have to switch to. It's much better just to give it a good old stab, stab, stab. But yeah, the very interesting thing about this is it just has a completely different reload mechanism compared to the other one, and it's a little bit slower as well, but it does get access to the bayonet. It's just, as I said, it's very odd going forward in the war, because obviously the Battle of Berlin was after the invasion of Normandy, and getting technically a worse GeForce because of that. So yeah, it is semi-auto though, so the faster you click the button, the more it fires. Always good when it comes to that. Now the next one is only available for engineers, I believe, and this is the first shotgun that the Germans actually get in the game. This is the M30 Luftwaffe drilling, and this is a triple-barreled shotgun, which was issued to Luftwaffe pilots mainly in Africa. So if they ever crashed or if they ever had to emergency land, then they would at least have this shotgun here so they could deal with the situation. Now, the thing that's interesting about the M30 is it actually is triple-barreled. You know, it has these two areas here. It has the main barrels here, and then it has a tertiary barrel down here, which fires much more of a pistol/rifle round instead of a shotgun shell. Now, I don't think this is working in game right now. I don't think there's a way to actually shoot the third, but I'm guessing at some point they will implement it. This thing does a ton of damage, by the way. As you can see, at 10 meters, 2,500 damage, at 40, 1,200, at 100, 250, and at 225. So it does, knock out over time. But if you compare that to the Gewehr, even at 200 meters, it only does 8, where the drilling does 25. So this thing, even at decent ranges, is incredibly powerful. It only has access to 2 shells, though. So once that's fired, you do have to reload. So it has the same issue as stuff like the TOS. Obviously the TOS, when you have a bunch of people running around with squads which are 6 to 9 individuals, the fact is, let's just see, can I change the firing mode? No, you can't. So I think it's stuck with the two shotgun shells, but are still very powerful. So the problem with having something like this, or the TOS, is when you're dealing with large groups of enemies, which the majority of the time you are, because most people run 6 members to 9 members in their squads, when you only have 2 shots, you can't really deal with the whole squad, right? So basically what you have to do is you have to bang, bang, then switch, bang, bang, and then switch, bang, bang, and then switch. And obviously this is not easy to do, and doesn't really work too well. Another thing I've found, and this might just be a me thing, actually aiming with this thing, I feel like the shot doesn't actually go in the center of the screen, but that's probably just me being bad at aiming, so I wouldn't blame, the game for that. These shells themselves look really interesting on the reload, as you can see. They've actually marked them and stuff, they're not just blank, and the aiming reticle is pretty nice for a shotgun. It's all pretty good. So I really enjoy the shotgun. The AI seems to absolutely love this shotgun as well. They're very, very, very good with it. Maybe a little bit too good, where you'll just be walking around and they'll just go bang, and then just and then just keep wandering. But yeah, that's that's definitely something that's funny, and you can tell it's an AI just because of the way they move. Because what they'll do is they'll run like this, stop for a second, turn, bang, and then start moving again. Where a normal player would be like that, or a normal player would do this, or they would do that with a little bit of a jump. So yeah, it's just kind of funny when the AI just completely batters you with the Luftwaffe drilling because of the amount of damage it does. The next thing is actually on the anti-tank guys, and it's the same as the Soviets. So the Soviets get access to a Panzerfaust 100, so do the Germans. So it's exactly the same thing. As the Soviet side, you can see the markings on it, which are really cool. Also the instructions on the front, and it does have the same system as the Piat, where you move the aimer up and down, and you're able to fire the Panzerfaust. There's a lot of damage to the T-34. We'll have to see in the future if it's as good against some of the heavier stuff. In the alpha test for the Battle of Berlin, they did have access to an IS-2, and I remember the anti-tank stuff wasn't exactly that useful against it. So we'll have to see once the campaign actually comes out, so we can see how effective it's going to be. Then the submachine gunners, or the assaulters, I should call them. The assaulters do get access to a new submachine gun. This is the MP 3008, which is a German copy of the British Sten gun. So This is kind of funny. When you have a look into the British Sten gun, what you'll find is like stories about how the British Sten gun was a copy of stuff like the MP18 and the MP28, which we already have in game. And now we actually have a German copy of the Sten gun. So this is technically a German copy of a British gun, which was a copy of a German gun. And, and it's just, you know, got around, which is very much interesting. The the submachine gun itself has a pretty good fire rate, has a really good reload time on it, and not too much recoil. The main issue with this thing is the damage output is very weak, and also its iron sight is absolutely terrible. I really don't like its iron sights at all. It's obviously supposed to be made like cheaply as a cheap alternative to the MP40, but my god, like they could have worked a bit on the iron sight. Like, look at this. Oh, like it's really not nice. But the reload's good. You know, it's going to have a very similar place in the game to the MP40. I wouldn't worry about it too much. It's going to be as good as, or similar to at least the MP40. All of the assaulters, you know, if you're going to have like 4 or 5 or 6 of them in a squad, you're going to be very effective, along with your engineers, your radio operators, all of that stuff. It's still going to have a very good place in the game. I just wish the iron sight was better. Like, the iron sight is just horrific. It blocks a lot of the screen, and also at the same time, it just looks really low poly. Like, the texture itself just looks trash, which is a real issue with the machine itself. But yeah, it's a decent submachine gun. I would take the PPD over it. I would definitely take a lot of high-firing guns over it, but I think it's okay. And at the same time, the assaulter does get access to the FG42 later on, just like the standard infantry. So if you prefer the FG42 or whatever the unlock for the assaulter is going to be, doubt it's going to be an MG34 somehow. But we'll have to see. Then maybe it'll be a good time. The next one is the MP40/1. Now this is the premium squad unique weapon. Just like how you have the PPD on the Soviet side of things, the MP41 is, or 40/1, is the Assaulter Premium one for the Germans. And what it is, as you can see, it's a prototype of the MP40, which is designed to have 2 magazines attached to it. And the way that it works in game right now is, so each of these magazines has 32 rounds in it, and once you finish one of the magazines, this one, which is actually in the feed in the center, then it clicks across the other magazine, and then it fires the other 32. And I'm guessing this was just designed to have a much larger clip, especially since the Soviets were running the drum mag at the time. And it's just really interesting to see how it works. Obviously, in real life, it had a few issues, mainly down to the fact that the mechanism wasn't always working properly, and also just some mechanical issues. So you can see the central magazine is in the center here. If we fire off 32 rounds, so there we go, and then it clicks straight across with a very simple movement. Now I don't know if they want to change the way that works, like the animation, but you can understand what happens, right? You can understand what is going on. It's just clicking over to the other one because the first magazine is empty. Now the second magazine is engaged, and you can get it going. What effectively this does is it means that the MP40/1 has access to double the capacity of other MP40s, which is very strong. You know, the MP40s have good damage outputs, decent rates of fire, good reload, very good controllability, meaning they don't have too much recoil, and overall just are really nice guns in the game. And with access to 64 rounds, this means that you can mow down a whole squad with one magazine hold, and it's actually really nice to use. So overall, this is a really good weapon, you know, very similar to the other side of things with the PPD. The PPD just has a higher fire rate, but they both have really high magazine counts and can both fell squads very quickly. The next set is the vehicles themselves. So the first one we have is the Panther G. Now what's interesting about the Panther G is they actually started off the CBT with the Panther F. And the Panther F obviously had the flat turret and was very easy to pen by T-3485s. This one's a little bit harder to do now, so that's kind of interesting that they made that decision. The Panther G has a crew of 5. It has a top-mounted 7.92mm and also a coaxial one, so if your commander comes out the top, then he is able to use the machine gun. The gun itself has a lot of damage to it. You know, the 75mm HE is very, very strong and is going to be for an incredibly long time. You can see there's the MG34 right there. And overall, it's just going to be one of those machines which is only really going to be taken over if they decide to add a King Tiger, which at that point, you know, you've really gonna have a few issues as the Soviet side, unless they get something which is equally as crazy. But overall, the Panther, it has good maneuverability. You know, it doesn't have a ton of side armor, so it's quite easy to take out. But overall, it's a very nice machine. The next one is the what do they call this squadron again? I always forget. Well, it's the SG-1, but I believe this is like the attacker squadron or the ground attacker squadron, the assaulter squadron for the air. And you get the ME-410 B/B-1. Now, it would have been nice if there was a further down the line ME-410, but my guess is that'll be in the campaign. The B-1 only has access to 220s and 213s, which are not very useful against tanks. They're only really useful against infantry and also against other planes. This thing actually flies really nicely. It feels very easy to control, and the actual cockpit itself is quite nice, and does get access to 2 500-kilo bombs. Now, the only issue with the 2 500-kilo bombs is that they don't drop independently, they drop at the same time, so you're going to nuke one area very, very nicely, but you can only nuke that one area. Generally, if you have independent bomb drops, it makes it a lot easier and a lot better to play something like this. But maybe in the future they'll either make them drop independently, or maybe they'll have a different plane in the campaign which you'll be able to use. The 500s will stop and advance, but it won't stop the Horde forever. The last one, the fighter squadron, gets access to a Bf-109 G14. This one does have the bomb racks, or the bomb rack under the central fuselage of the machine, but it doesn't get access to any bombs right now. My guess is it's going to get access to a 250, just looking at how the racks are set up. I don't think it's going to get access to 50-kilo bombs, so a 250 would be really nice on this machine, and it gets access to 120mm and 213s, so this will be going after stuff like the IL-2s, and also the AC-9Ts that are around the place. I think it'll be fine to do that, you know, it'll work well. The Bf-109 cockpit's a little bit cramped, but it works okay, especially with specific upgrades with the pilots. Overall, it'll be fine. We'll have to see the other options for vehicles going forward when it comes to the campaign. Me personally, I'm much more interested in the other offerings. But that is the new weapons that are available in the Battle of Berlin right now for the Germans. As you can see, there's a lot of cool stuff, a lot of things to play with and have fun with. And if you want access to the Battle of Berlin, you have to buy the CBT pack for it. But remember, in the future, it will go into OBT and be free for everybody. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank BRFC, Swollen Ostrich, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Conte Baraka, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Lafouche, Barine, and Samuel Schlick for supporting the channel.